you can accomplish very important mitochondrial adaptations and very important metabolic adaptations by exercising 1 hour, right? So this is the duration. Let's start by the duration, right? So if you try to do that 1 hour to 1 hour and a half range, you're on target. Maybe go back to the frequency, right? The dose. So the frequency that I see is that this type of training ideally needs to be done between 3 to 4 days a week, ideally. What I've seen, and how can I know this? I know this because I've seen in the laboratory everything, right? The person who trains 1 day at these zones, or 2 days, or 3 days, or 4 days, or high intensity, low intensity, and I see the adaptations. How do I see the adaptations? Again, looking at at fat oxidation, lactate clearance capacity, both surrogates of mitochondrial function, right? So I've been identifying the dose of that training. So if you train once a week there, chances are that you're going to deteriorate over time, and especially as we age. Something that I see, for example, in high intensity exercisers and bodybuilders, that they have a very poor mitochondrial function compared to people who do more, a little bit of everything, right? So 1 day a week is not going to work. 2 days a week, it might maintain what you have. But if you're new to an exercise program, might not be enough. 3 days a week, now we're starting to see, for sure. 4 days a week, now we're talking. Ideally 5 days a week or 6, but not everybody has obviously 6 days a week, right? So I would say that 4 days a week is ideal, right? That's the first principle. The second principle is the duration. Going back to what I was saying, right? With 1 hour, maybe Pogacar needs 4 hours, 5 hours to keep increasing those huge mitochondria for a long time. 1 hour, if you walk or if you run, might be very, very good for you. 1 hour walk, or run, you might have to bring it up. That's part of the plan too, right? You cannot start off the bat with 1 hour. You might start by 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, increasing it, but maybe about an hour. And if you bike, for example, about an hour, 20 minutes, hour and a half, that's what I see, that if you do that for 4 days a week, things are starting to move.
I tell patients based on my experience, so I don't know how extrapolatable that is. Mm-hmm. When I'm in zone 2, as confirmed by lactate levels, mm-hmm. so call it 1.7 to 1.9 millimole, which is what I target, mm-hmm. I can carry out a conversation. So I can spend my entire, because I do most of mine on a Wahoo kicker. I put my bike on a Wahoo kicker. Nice. I can spend the entire 45 minutes on a phone call.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's not as comfortable as this discussion here.
Exactly.
I'm a little more strained.
Yeah.
But if I can't talk, if I feel like I can't talk, I'm too high in the intensity.
And I use the same metrics also with people who, like you mentioned, they don't want to do a heart lactate meter, or they don't have access, or I get hundreds of emails about where can I do this test, and or is there anything that I can do, right? So, and I agree 100%, that with everything that we know at the granular cellular level, by injecting fuels and substrates directly into the mitochondria, we cannot get more cellular level and scientific that the surrogate of the perceived exertion, it works beautifully. I know that people are coming out with different algorithms based on heart rate variability or the DFA 1 alpha, et cetera. But honestly, I agree 100% with you. If you can, I always tell people, if you can exercise, whatever the exercise you do, and maintain a conversation like you and I are doing, you're way too easy. You're probably zone 1.
Yep.
If you can talk, but is some form of strain, you can talk for 2 hours, right? But we're talking.
You're just at that threshold of the put it this way. The other litmus test I tell people is the person on the other end will know you are exercising.
Exactly.
You will not be able to mask from them that you are exercising.
Exactly. And if you cross to the point where you cannot maintain that conversation, that's where it's because you need to breathe much faster. because you're producing more CO2. And that's probably because you're already transitioning from the slow twitch muscle fibers to the fast twitch muscle fibers, more glycolytic, more lactate, more CO2, more buffering capacity. So it seems old school, but it works beautifully.
As far as what heart rate guidance comes with it, Phil Maffetone uses a test that I think is a pretty good starting place, which is 180 minus your age. Now, the fitter you are, the less relevant that becomes. So I'm 51, so that would put me at 130, but I can tell you my zone 2 is above 130. So if you're fitter, you may add 5 to 10 to that. But again, for somebody just starting out, RPE is all you need to know. 180 minus your age is good. And then if a person is fit enough that they truly know their maximum heart rate, we tell them to start at somewhere between 75 and 80% of that number. It's my belief that this is the most important place to be training your mitochondria. And if we understand that mitochondrial function and the deterioration of mitochondrial function is one of the hallmarks of aging, then anything we can do to delay that process and enhance mitochondrial function is going to be a benefit. Let's start by just defining what is zone 2 exercise. All right. This is important to understand. There are many different ways that people talk about zone 2. In fact, just prior to hopping on this Instagram thing, I was on a call with some other doctors, and this question came up, which is, well, my patients keep asking me, what is zone 2, and do you define it by heart rate, and what does this mean? And it's important to understand that the zone 2 that I'm referring to is a very pure definition. It's a physiologic definition. Frankly, it's a cellular definition. So there are ways that people just say, look, zone 2 is 80% of your maximum heart rate, or zone 2 is a certain percent of your maximum power output, or what we might even call your functional threshold power. I'm referring to something totally different, and it is a cellular definition, which is the highest level of energy you can put out while keeping lactate below 2 millimolar. Okay, that's a lot. Let's explain what it means. So anytime you're undergoing cellular respiration, your body is basically converting glucose or fatty acids into ATP. And that process can be done very efficiently with oxygen. But as the demand for ATP, which is energy, gets higher and higher and higher, your body has to start making trade-offs, and it has to start going quicker than it would like to, and not just utilize the mitochondria, and doing this process outside of the mitochondria. And in doing so, one of the byproducts of that is lactate. So we use lactate as a proxy for any time your body is exceeding the capacity of the mitochondria. And once you exceed about 2 millimole of lactate, which is not a very high amount, certainly higher than you are at rest, but nowhere near what you would be exerting when you do an all-out effort, you have sort of exceeded the threshold of the mitochondria to stay in an equilibrium where it can clear the amount of lactate it produces. So that's how I define zone 2. And when I say I do, I don't mean that this is my definition. I'm saying that's the definition that I use personally and with my patients. I think the most important benefits are physiologic. So the more zone 2 you do, the better you are able to do both insulin sensitive and insulin independent glucose uptake. So this makes for very efficient mitochondria when it comes to glucose disposal. And that's really one of the hallmarks of metabolic health. So again, when you go back to what I said earlier about these people that are, have a zone 2 threshold that's as low as 1 watt per kilogram, and you contrast that with people who are at the other end of that spectrum at 4 watts per kilo, right? Like the fittest of the fit and the least fit. When you look at the glycemic difference, basically people with type 2 diabetes are going to be down at this 1 watt per kilo, and the people up at 4 watts per kilo are basically going to be the most carbohydrate sensitive people imaginable. And remember, every day you age, you're becoming less and less insulin sensitive, less and less carbohydrate sensitive, or more and more carbohydrate sensitive, less and less carbohydrate resistant. And so we want to push the boundaries of that as much as possible. I think the other benefits, there's certainly some evidence that this increases our mitochondria's ability to combat reactive oxygen species and all sorts of other damaging processes involved in inflammation.
First of all, zone 2 cardio is absolutely critical to our health for a number of reasons that I already mentioned. But in addition to that, zone 2 cardio does not impede and in fact can enhance our other aspects of fitness. So for example, our strength training, our hypertrophy training, or any type of speed work or other types of cardiovascular training one might do.
Super inspiring how much they improve in their 60s. I've seen people in their 70s with the metabolic parameters of people active, moderately active, in their 30s.
Wow.
I saw the world champion in the cycling who's 81, in the category of 80 to 85. Believe me, there's a category of that, whose metabolic parameters were those of someone in their 30s, healthy, active. So this is incredibly inspiring. Then I think that we're rewriting what's been taught to us in the books.
Now, in fairness, was that person an elite athlete? Were they a professional athlete in their 20s and 30s?
Never. And this is what struck me. He was a smoker, hypertensive, and he started cycling because he needed to change his lifestyle in his 40s. Because that's the same question, like, wow, you must have been doing this all your life. Like, no, I started riding my bike when I was in my 40s. I was a smoker, I was heavy, I was hypertensive. Like, what? So it's incredible that 40 years later, he's in a better health than where he was.
But I'll tell you, it speaks to why this level of training should be thought of in the same way that you think of accumulating wealth, which is you got to, it's day in and day out, small compounded gains over years and years and years is why a 40-year-old overweight smoker can become a world champion at 80. It's because he probably never once again got out of shape in that 40 years.
Absolutely. And this is incredibly inspiring. You know, when I see these people in their 60s just retired and they come to do their first test and 1 year later they come back, it gives me the goosebumps, because it is like, oh my gosh, like how can you improve so much? And they're like, and they say like, look, I'm 64 and I feel strong as when I was in my 30s. So it's incredibly inspiring to see all these examples and in a way where we're rewriting what we've been taught for years, that once you turn 40, everything is going down. You can really change. And again, you own your own body, and you can really, take ownership of that and improve it at any age.